Today we're going to talk about altering a short-chambered 16-gauge Browning. At one time I had a published list that Browning actually put out, and it actually went through all the various steps to alter one of these short-chambered guns. In the early days of manufacture, they used the old short 2 9/16 shells. Then later on, of course, they went to the 2 3/4. So there's a lot of these old beaters out there that are chambered. They're short chambered and they won't handle the 2 3/4. I used to do a lot of alterations on these and modifying and converting them over to 2 3/4. I don't do a lot anymore because you can kind of just go to Cabela's and buy the short ammo, and that's what most guys do now. But I got one in the other day that the man really wants it altered to shoot the longer 2 3/4 shells, and we're going to do that for him. He spent a lot of money on this gun. I'm not just sure why. He's going to blue it, and we're going to put new wood on it and the whole bit. It's his money. I guess he can do what he wants, so we're going to modify it. First thing I noticed when I took it apart, the action, when I pulled the stock off, the action tube is broken off, and we've talked about that before in some other videos. But I thought today we'd just go ahead and sweat this new action tube in. I've already bored it out like we showed in previous videos. This is one of the old threaded tubes, and threaded tubes are weak. The threads weaken them and they break off at the receiver. So we bored it out with a special reamer that we bought years ago, and we're going to sweat in this new tube. These last a lot longer. They're not weakened by the threads, and this is what Browning does. That's what I do. We're going to sweat this new tube in. So we've got to do that before we can really start our alteration. So we'll go ahead and solder that in. Then we'll get serious about this short chambered gun and see if we can get it altered to shoot some 2 3/4 inch. So we've got our torch going here, and we've got some silver solder. We've got our flux on that tube, and we're going to put the heat to it and pull a little silver solder in there and get this tube repaired, because we can't proceed with our alter job till we do that. Of course, we couldn't test fire it. These tubes breaking off, the old threaded tubes, that's a common thing, and the real fix is to sweat in the new style tube, and then it's permanent. It won't break off again, most likely. So a little solder in there. We don't need a lot, just enough to get in there and hold that tube in. You don't want to put a lot in there because it just needs more cleanup work if you put too much silver in there. So there, we've done it. That pulled it in real good, and that tube's on. So now we can proceed with our alteration to the 2 3/4 inch. I have soldered my tube back in, my action tube. Got it sweated in there, silver soldered in. It's good shape now. That won't break again like the threaded ones. But I had to do that before I could do my alteration. Now, we need to talk about where we're going to start on altering this gun. I'm going to start with the major part of the alteration, and that is on the barrel extension. Of course, anyone can figure out that we got to lengthen the chamber. That would always be part of the alteration. And we have to extend out the ejection port a little bit forward to stretch it out. That's all we're doing on this whole complete thing, is we're just trying to stretch it out, open it up so that longer hull can get out of the port. So one of the major alterations is going to be on the barrel extension. Most of your work is going to be on this part right here. We're going to ream our chamber out to 2 3/4 inch, and we're going to have to change this ejector. This is a fixed ejector. It doesn't move, it doesn't slide. Here is this is a 2 3/4 inch barrel that I picked up to show you. See, this ejector slides. That's all part of the extraction ejection process on that longer hull. So we're going to modify this old short chambered barrel to a sliding ejector, and that's one of the major alterations on it. Now, I've gone ahead and drilled out the rivet, and here's what's left of it, just to kind of speed things up a little bit. So I've removed the rivet. Now I've got to get this ejector out. They're pretty tight, usually. Now this may not show up too well in the camera, but we'll do what we can. But I'm going to go ahead and tap it out, remove it. It's coming out pretty tight. Now, in the old days, Browning would sell you ejector rivets and sliding ejectors for making this alteration. They quit carrying those items because they just didn't need them anymore. They did so few alterations. But I was looking through my drawers back in the back a little bit ago, and I found an actual alter ejector. And it's got a slot in it. Here's the one I took out. It's got the hole in it. And you see this one has a slot. So when we rivet this ejector in, it's going to actually slide. You'll see what I mean in just a minute. Now, if you're unable to get these ejectors, which you can't anymore, you can modify these original ejectors by just taking a little rat tail file and opening up this hole and extending it to the rear and make you a slot so that your ejector can slide. I've already kind of worked on this ejector a little bit to make it go in. You don't want them to be real loose, because if they're loose, they'll kind of cock from side to side and do bad things. So you want to slide in just really smooth and easy, and then rivet that in place. Now, you can't go to Browning any longer and get the rivets that you need for doing this alteration, for putting in this ejector. So I just modify the new style rivets that they sell at Browning. I just take and put them in my drill, and I kind of take the shank down on a little bit and the head down, so that I can put that new rivet in place and put this ejector in place. But before we put in that sliding ejector, there are some other alterations you have to do to this extension. We're going to go ahead and ream out the chamber, and then there's a cut that you need to make in the side of this extension that makes it so that that hull can swing out, and it clears it a little bit, which I will show you when we get over in the vise here in just a minute. And we'll make those two alterations over in the vise. And while we're over on the vise, we will go ahead and put the rivet in and put our ejector in. And that'll complete our barrel. And our barrel will be modified and ready for that, the longer hulls. Then we'll go to the receiver. So let's get our goods together and move over to the vise, and let's get this alteration done on this extension right now. So I'm trying to get this barrel ready to alter here. Now remember, we have our new alter ejector ready to go, and this rivet, little tiny rivet, it was a larger rivet that I turned down because Browning doesn't have that little small one anymore. So I just kind of turned down the larger rivet and make it work. But before we put the rivet in, we're going to go ahead and ream our chamber out to 2 3/4 inch. Now, reaming is reaming. Let's see here. Just the usual, plenty of oil on your reamer, and go in there. And this reamer I've got, I take it down just till it comes down to this rim, and I know it's 2 3/4. And I'm kind of to depth. I've been reaming on this chamber a little bit, so I'm kind of just about there. Okay, it just went to depth there. Now, I would recommend after this to take it and take a polishing, some emery cloth, and go in and hone that forcing cone. You don't necessarily have to, but I like to do that to kind of get some of the reamer marks out of it. Now, another alteration we're going to make, we're going to cut out part of this ejector extension. We're going to actually dish this out a little bit here, and the whole idea, of course, is to make so this empty hull can swing out. So we're going to go ahead and make this alteration by altering the barrel extension on this gun, and we're going to be dishing it out. We're going to be cutting out, I'll kind of show you the finished product when I get it done, but we're going to be cutting down to the end of to the edge of the rim that's cut here in this extension. But we're not going to change this outside shape at all. And the reason for that being, I got a gun in last week, a guy very unprofessionally tried to do one. If you cut out too much metal over on this edge here, you end up with a big old gap here. And when we get all done, you want this to look just like it does here, so the bolt kind of still draws up tight against it. So we'll go ahead and grind that, and then after I get it ground out, I'll try to get a close up and show you what it's supposed to look like. Just a Dremel tool and a stone on the end is all it is. Nothing fancy. So I know you had a little trouble seeing what I was doing because I had it in the vise down there and all, but if you can kind of see the finished product, we've taken this stone and we have ground this down to the base of the rim cutout. We didn't go past that any. It's a little hard for you to see, but we just took this stone and went in there. But when we did that, the idea is that it makes room for this hull to swing out. It just gives it a cutout. But we didn't change the outside shape so your breech bolt fits up tight and all. It just makes it look better, and it's just the right way and the wrong way to do that. So we've done that. That alteration's done. Now the next thing we're going to do, we've reamed the chamber. We've cut out our extension. We've altered that. We're going to put in the sliding ejector. Now remember, we had this all kind of ready to go, and there's a sliding ejector. Now we have to rivet that in place, and the way we do that is I have this kind of a little, this is a piece of rod with it's been kind of had a flat ground on, and the idea is that this rod's going to go up inside the ejector. Anyway, you'll see what I mean here in just a minute, but we're just going to grip this in the vise real good and tight. And then we're going to put our rivet in. We're going to put in our sliding ejector, and then the rivet's got to go, and I'm going to have to see if I can get my fingers to get that rivet in there. If not, I'll have to get a pair of needle nose or something so I can kind of get it in place. Let's see, I think it's going to go. That went. Okay, so our ejector is in place. Our rivet is in place. Now, we have a little bit of the ejector sticking up, protruding up on the other side of the extension. Now I've taken a carbide bit because this extension is hard, and I've cut a little chamfer on that hole so the rivet's got something to grip onto. Now, the trick is to hold everything in place and put this rod right over your rivet like so. And that's going to support your rivet. And then we're going to peen it. So we have peened this our rivet in to hold our new sliding ejector in place, and we've got it in place now. It's installed, and the rivet was a little high on the back side here, and in the front I trimmed it down on the back. So it's riveted, it's in place now, and now this ejector slides. It's a little snug. I'm going to have to tap it and work it around a little bit, but it will slide pretty freely after you shoot a few rounds, especially it'll break loose. So now we have our sliding ejector installed, and we have our chamber lengthened, and we've altered our ejector our extension, and so the barrel is modified and now ready. That's the biggest part of the whole alteration is doing the barrel, but it's up and going, and that's finished. So we're going to jump back over on the vise. I'll tell you what, I've got my vise here. I'll just show you part of the alteration, being we got to do it here on the vise. Your locking block latch has to be modified. This needs to be, being I'm on the vise, I'm just going to show you this. This needs to be brought back. The book says 3/16 of an inch. So we're going to take it back about that length. And that's just done with a file. Just take your file and dress it back 3/16 of an inch. And that's part of the alteration. I'm just showing you now because I'm kind of here on my vise, and I'll kind of show you what the finished product's supposed to look like. That's getting there. It's pretty close right now. That looks about right. So we're going to take our file and dress this back right about 3/16 of an inch. The book tells you to remove 3/16 of an inch on a lot of part of this alteration. That's not really totally true. You don't need to come back 3/16 of an inch. We kind of did on this one here, This is our locking block latch, and that's just part of the modification. Dress took her file and just brought this back, brought this shoulder back here to about 3/16 of an inch. So that's done. Now I'll tell you something else I'll do while we're here in the vise. Here's another part of the alteration. Where's my bolt? Here it is. This link needs to be modified, and I'll show you why we're doing that. Now the book says to remove 3/16 of an inch off the back of this link, and it says keep your line straight. There's an angle here, and it says keep that angle the same as it is now. They don't really do that down at Browning, and I don't do it either. All you really need to do is dub this off a little bit on the back here, and not really 3/16 of an inch necessarily. But I have a cutaway gun here, and I'll show you why I'm doing this after I've done it. But this is just another modification that I'm going to do because I've got it in the vise here. So we're going to dress this link back. We're going to dub it off, take it back, and there again, it's not going to be totally 3/16 of an inch, but it's going to be about half of that distance probably. But it's just part of the modification for altering these. That's just, like I say, the book says keep this angle the same as the angle that you have on the link. That's not really true. Browning, when they do them down there, they don't. They just basically do like I'm doing. I know that because I've seen guns that they've altered at Browning, and I've looked at them and they just dub this link off. And the idea in this, we've taken that link back, and I'll show you with our cutaway gun here in a little bit. This link, this is your safety sear right here, and this link straddles that safety sear. And when this gun comes, when this bolt comes forward into battery position, it pulls the safety sear off of the trigger and clears it so the gun can fire. They call it safety sear because it's there so you can't fire the gun out of battery. The bolt has to be all the way forward and locked up. It's hard to see anything in this gun because it's so dirty. I haven't cleaned it yet, but it's filthy dirty. We're going to blue it and everything, so it will be clean. But that's the idea. And I've got a cutaway model here, and I'll talk to you a little bit about that. So another major part of your alteration here is to bring this ejection port forward. Now, there again, the old instructions I had said bring this forward 3/16 of an inch. If you do that, you're probably going to have some problems, and I'll talk to you about it later on. I don't take it back that much. I take like maybe a 1/16 or just a little more off. And I'm not going to take anything off of this gun right now because someone's already done that. They tried to alter this gun out of my shop, and they didn't do it correctly. But same tool, the same grinding stone, put it in your vise and just grind this area and bring it forward, and try to keep your angles the same so it doesn't really look like it's been modified too much. I'm just not going to do anything on this one because they've taken some out and I don't want to take any more. And what can happen if they take too much out, when the barrel is out of the gun and your bolt comes forward, it gets to the point that it comes too far forward. And what happens is, when we modify this link, what happens is the link comes too far forward, the bolt comes too far forward when the barrel's out of the gun, and then your safety sear jumps up behind your link and locks up the gun. And it'll do that if you take too much out of that port. So you want this to come forward and pull that safety sear off of the trigger, but you don't want it jumping up behind it. And it will do that if you take too much out of that ejection port. So take out about a 16, a little more, and just grind it out with your stone right up in this area here. Don't go the full 3/16 of an inch. You don't really need to. So we've kind of done most of our modifying. We're going to get back on the bench here and kind of reassemble this gun. The gun's filthy dirty. I'll clean it when we get ready to blue it. But we'll put it back together. We're going to take it back and test fire and see if it's going to kick those 2 3/4 out. All right. Now the last things we're going to do to complete this alteration is to cut the forearm forward, and we do bring it forward about 3/16 of an inch. And you have to take wood out of the forearm right down this area here. Now, this is a special reamer that they use down at Browning. I think it's kind of a homemade reamer, but it works very well. This side's set for 12 gauge, because sometimes you need to relieve forearms a little bit, bring them forward. This one's set for the 16 gauge. So this reamer goes in to your forearm, and you just ream it. Twist it, ream it. And I've already kind of done a little bit of it, just kind of speed things up here to bring this forearm forward. And what it's done is it's cut this area of the forearm forward, And the idea in that is, and I'll show you when we get this gun back together, we want this barrel to come forward a little more, and we're trying to stretch everything out and make more room for everything. So we're going to ream this forearm out, and we're just about out to depth. I know when I've reached my depth because there's a rim cut on this. There again, this is kind of a specialty tool that's designed just for this. Kind of need that for the modification. So we brought this forearm out, brought it forward, and this is going to let our barrel come forward, and everything's stretching out. One other thing I want to talk about, years ago down at Browning, they had what they called an altar dog. Now, the dog they're talking, I asked them about it down at Browning one day, and the gal back down there, she really didn't know what I was talking about, but they sold a dog that goes on your, this is your dog that goes on your carrier dog. What they had was a dog that's a little taller, a little longer, so when this gun cycled to the rear, it would hold the bolt back a little further. They're again trying to stretch out everything, excuse me, trying to stretch out everything and make more room for that longer hull. And this cutaway gun here, I'm having trouble getting my hands where you can see it, but right in this port here, you can see where this dog comes into contact with the breech bolt right there. It's going to be a little hard for you to see. And with the altar dog in place, that bolt's going to come back and be held back at the rear just a little farther to make room so we can get that hull to eject out of the port. So they don't have the altar dogs down at Browning any longer, and they don't have the altar rivets because, well, there's just so little call for it anymore. I assume they probably still do a few down there, but they probably don't do very many a year. I sure don't do very many myself because there again, you can go to, I go to Cabela's and I can buy the short ammo. See the difference? You can buy it, it's just there, and it's not very expensive. So that's the reason we don't do too many of these alterations anymore. Most guys just go buy the shorter ammo and shoot it. Excuse me. So we have modified this gun, and we've got all of our modifications done. This gun is filthy, filthy dirty. I'm not worried about that right now. We're going to be bluing this gun, so we're going to pull it out and clean all the parts up when we get ready to blue it. But in the meantime, before we blue it, I want to put it all together and test fire it, just to be sure that our altar job is complete and that everything works before we get into the bluing operation. So we will go ahead and assemble it, get it back together, and then we'll step back to the test firing tube and see if we got it right. So we have completed the alteration on this gun, took it back and test fired it, and everything works. I want to show you one thing. When you alter this, remember we cut out on the forearm a little bit to bring everything forward. So now you can see kind of some shiny part of the extension protruding out of the receiver. Now when we blue this gun, we'll leave it blued back into this area so you don't have that shiny area. But when you're at a gun show or somewhere and you see one of these and you see this kind of shiny area out in here, that kind of tells you the gun's been altered. Now we'll blue it and get rid of that, but you can tell when they've been altered. You just look down in to see if they have the sliding ejector, see if you have some shiny part of your barrel extension protruding out. And that tells you it's been altered. So we went back and test fired it. It spits those 2 3/4 out now, and you can go to the hardware store and buy those and shoot them all day long. You'll be good to go. So that's the idea of altering one of these. Really not much to it. Don't recommend trying any of that at home because it takes special equipment and tools to do it. And we've got those, and it's important that it be done right to make things safe and so they work like it should. But really not much to it, and now you know how we stretch those things out and make them shoot those 2 3/4.